A kind-hearted waitress helps a homeless man with her last $5, never imagining that her small act of kindness will change her life forever. The next day, he returns in a suit, revealing he is the CEO of a company she's always admired. What follows is a journey of unexpected friendship, romance, and life-changing opportunities. The morning rush at Café Lumière was relentless. The hum of espresso machines mingled with the chatter of patrons and the scrape of chairs across polished wooden floors. Steam rose from countless lattes, and the smell of fresh pastries hung thick in the air. Emma Carter moved with practiced efficiency, balancing a tray of steaming drinks in one hand while taking orders with the other. Her curly hair, pulled into a messy bun, kept falling over her tired eyes, but she barely noticed. At 25, Emma had mastered the art of surviving chaos. Between juggling tables, refilling condiments, and dodging impatient customers, she felt like a professional acrobat performing without a safety net. The tips were never enough, but she liked the work. It kept her moving, kept her mind busy, and most importantly, kept her away from the loneliness of her tiny studio apartment. "Emma, table 5 is waving," Mrs. Green called from behind the counter, her tone clipped but not unkind. The cafe owner had a sharp eye for mistakes, though she rarely let small ones ruin anyone's day. "Hurry up, and don't spill the cappuccino this time." Emma gritted her teeth and weaved between the tables. She balanced the tray carefully, placing each cup with precision. One table of tourists tried to complain about the foam on their lattes. Another couple demanded gluten-free muffins that weren't even in stock. She apologized with a practiced smile, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing against her back. Finally, she allowed herself a quick moment near the door to catch her breath. That's when she noticed him. He was leaning against the corner of the cafe, just outside the glass window. His coat was threadbare, patches worn thin from years of weather and wear. His shoes were scuffed and caked with dirt. He held a crumpled paper cup in one hand, gazing longingly at the pastries displayed behind the glass. He was trembling, though whether from cold or hunger, Emma couldn't tell. There was a quiet dignity in the way he held himself, despite his obvious struggle. Most people would have looked away. Emma's first instinct was practicality. She had bills to pay, a car that was overdue for repairs, and rent that was looming over her like a storm cloud. But something about him stopped her. Maybe it was the desperation in his eyes, or maybe it was the faint, polite smile he gave her when their eyes met. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat. "Be right back," she muttered to Mrs. Green, who was too busy serving another table to notice. Emma stepped outside into the biting autumn wind. The man looked up as she approached, surprise flickering across his face. I didn't mean to bother you," he said softly. His voice was rough, but not unpleasant. "You're not bothering me," Emma said. She dug into her pocket and pulled out the last $5 she had. "Here, get something to eat." He looked at the money, then at her, as if she had just handed him a piece of gold. "I thank you. Really," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "Most people just ignore someone like me." Emma shook her head. "Everyone deserves a little kindness. That's all." The man hesitated, then smiled. Not the desperate, grateful smile of someone used at charity, but a quiet, genuine smile that seemed to reach his eyes. "I'll remember this," he said, almost as if promising himself something. Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. Emma felt a flutter of warmth in her chest. She nodded, hoping he could feel the sincerity in her words. She watched him shuffle down the street, $5 in his hand, and disappear into the flow of morning commuters. Her own heart felt lighter, though her stomach still grumbled. The cafe beckoned, and she returned to her post, trying to shake the strange mix of hope and melancholy that lingered after their brief encounter. Inside, the chaos of the cafe resumed immediately. The line at the counter had doubled, and a barista was shouting over the clatter of steaming milk frothers. Emma wiped her hands on her apron and jumped back into the fray. She took orders, served drinks, and navigated the tightrope of polite smiles and hurried apologies. Yet, every time she glanced out the window, she half expected to see the man she had just helped, maybe waving, maybe smiling. But the street was empty, and life inside the cafe carried on without pause. During a brief lull, Emma leaned against the counter and closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about her rent, her car, and her dreams of something bigger than waiting tables. The city outside moved fast, and she often felt like she was running in place, never quite catching up. But for a moment, she remembered the man's eyes, the way he had looked at her, not as someone to pity, but as someone to respect. That small act of kindness had made her feel human in a way the morning rush never could. The door jingled again, snapping her from her thoughts. A regular walked in, smiling and greeting her. Emma returned the smile a little more genuinely than before. She didn't know it yet, but that simple choice, handing over her last $5 to a stranger, would change her life in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. As she carried another tray of steaming drinks to a crowded table, she whispered under her breath, almost to herself, "Kindness doesn't go unnoticed." And somewhere in the city, a man who had received that kindness was nodding silently to himself, promising that the memory would not be wasted. Emma Carter trudged up the narrow stairs to her tiny apartment, the kind of place where every inch had a purpose and every corner felt lived in. The radiator clanged as she flicked it on, sending a wave of warmth through the small space. She tossed her coat onto bed and slumped into the only chair near her desk, rubbing her tired eyes. Her morning at Café Lumière had left her exhausted, but there was a strange lightness in her chest, an echo of the encounter from yesterday. The man, she couldn't stop thinking about him. His threadbare coat, the way he had accepted her $5 without shame, the subtle dignity in his posture. Most people in the city would have ignored him, but Emma had seen something human, something that mattered. Her phone buzzed with a message from her best friend, Lila. "Hey, want to grab dinner later?" Emma typed back quickly, her fingers hesitating for a moment. "Can't. Too tired. Maybe tomorrow." She felt the pang of loneliness settle in, the kind that only city life could produce, where neighbors were strangers and friends were often a text away. Emma's apartment was humble but cozy. Her walls were adorned with photos of her family, small paintings she had bought from street artists, and a faded poster of her favorite cafe, a reminder of her dreams beyond waiting tables. She sank onto her bed and stared at the ceiling, her mind wandering to the man outside the cafe. What was his story? Why was he out there alone, searching for a meal? A sudden pang of guilt hit her. Had she done enough? Had $5 really made a difference? She shook her head. It had been all she could spare, and yet she felt compelled to do more. But life, as always, was relentless. Bills waited. Her car needed repairs, and her schedule at the cafe was unrelenting. She closed her eyes and let herself drift, imagining a life where she could do more, help more, give more, live more. The next few hours at work blurred together. Emma moved from table to table, her mind half in the morning's rush, half lost in thought. She noticed small acts of kindness she had never paid attention before. The way Mrs. Green offered free cookie to a crying child, the way a regular left an extra tip for the barista, the quiet camaraderie among co-workers who shared the chaos of the cafe. It was a small world of human connection amidst the mechanical grind of city life. During a brief pause, she stepped outside to take a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. The streets buzzed with commuters and cyclists, the city alive with motion. Emma's gaze wandered to the corner where she had seen the man yesterday. He wasn't there. The memory of his polite smile, however, stayed with her. There was a lesson embedded in that moment. She realized something about human connection, about noticing the people others overlooked. It was as if the universe had given her a gentle reminder that her kindness mattered, even if she didn't yet see the full impact. A few blocks away, Emma spotted a newsstand. On impulse, she bought a small notebook and a pen. Sitting on a nearby bench, she began to jot down her thoughts, the words spilling freely. Kindness costs so little, but it can change everything. I wish I could do more. Her handwriting was messy, rushed, but sincere. It felt good to capture the fleeting thoughts swirling in her mind. She didn't know why, but writing always made the weight on her chest feel lighter, as if putting her reflections on paper somehow solidified them, gave them permanence. By the time she returned to the cafe, the lunch crowd had begun to trickle in. Emma's shift resumed a familiar rhythm, taking orders, refilling coffee and dodging complaints. But something had changed. She moved with a quiet confidence, a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. Perhaps it was a memory of a man whose life was harder than hers. Perhaps it was the affirmation that even small gestures could have meaning. Whatever it was, Emma felt alive in a way she hadn't for weeks. At one point, she paused to rest her hands on the counter, watching a young couple share a laugh over their cappuccinos. Their joy was small, ordinary, but it reminded her of something important. Life was made up of these fleeting moments, the brief intersections between strangers, the smiles, the nods of understanding. And sometimes those moments could ripple outward, touching lives in ways invisible to the eye. The day passed slowly, yet purposefully. Emma noticed the little things. The way a customer's mood could shift with a simple thank you. The way a colleague's encouragement could lift her spirits. The way a fleeting act of compassion could linger in memory. She realized that her encounter with the man outside the cafe wasn't just a random moment. It was a lesson, a reminder that life's value wasn't measured in dollars or status, but in connection, empathy, and courage. As the cafe began to empty in the late afternoon, Emma wiped down the counters and stacked the chairs. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the floor, painting the room in gold. She allowed herself a quiet moment, closing her eyes and breathing the warm, familiar scent of coffee and pastries. She felt a strange sense of anticipation, though she couldn't explain why. Something in the air suggested that life, with all its unpredictability, was about to shift in ways she hadn't imagined. Her shift ended, and she walked home to the bustling city streets, the notebook tucked under her arm. Emma's mind kept returning to the man outside the cafe, the kindness she had shown, and the mysterious promise in his words. Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. She smiled to herself, a soft, hopeful smile, feeling the weight of her ordinary life lighten just a little. Emma didn't know it yet, but tomorrow would bring a moment that would turn her world upside down. The man she had helped, a stranger with nothing but dignity, would return, not as a beggar, not as a passerby, but as someone entirely unexpected. And in that encounter, everything she had ever wished for, everything she had dreamed of beyond the confines of her tiny apartment and crowded cafe, would begin to change. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint aroma of freshly baked bread from the cafe across the street. Emma Carter hurried down the familiar sidewalks, her worn sneakers slapping against the pavement, balancing a tray of drinks she had prepared for the early breakfast crowd. The streets were alive with commuters clutching coffees, cyclists weaving between pedestrians, and the occasional street musician filling the air with an upbeat melody. Emma's mind was already on the rush ahead. Today felt like any other. Tables to serve, orders to take, complaints to soothe. Bills were waiting, rent was looming, and her life felt as predictable as the cafe's morning menu. She adjusted her apron, shook her curly hair back from her face, and pushed the door open, stepping into the warm, fragrant chaos of Café Lumiere. The usual hum of conversation greeted her, cups clinking against saucers, baristas shouting over the hiss of steaming milk. Emma placed a tray on the counter, glancing briefly at the first table, where a couple argued over scrambled eggs. Then she froze. The cafe door jingled, and for a split second, she thought it was just another customer. But when she looked up, the figure that stepped inside made her stomach twist with disbelief. It was him, the man she had helped yesterday. Only he wasn't the same. The threadbare coat and worn shoes were gone. In their place was a sharply tailored navy suit, polished leather shoes, and a crisp white shirt. His hair was neatly combed, and the faint worry lines on his face now seemed replaced by a confident calm. He walked with a purposeful stride, not a shuffling gait. Every eye in the cafe seemed to follow him, yet he moved with quiet authority, as if the room recognized him without question. Emma's breath caught. "Daniel," she whispered under her breath, disbelief lining her voice. He looked directly at her, a small, knowing smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Emma?" His voice was smooth, commanding, yet gentle, the same voice she remembered, only amplified by certainty. Her tray trembled in her hands, spilling a few drops of coffee onto the counter. She blinked rapidly, hoping she was dreaming, hoping the city had not turned its usual gray chaos into some cruel trick of fate. But there he was, The man whose dignity she had glimpsed in a single moment of compassion now stood before her, not as a stranger in need, but as someone entirely other. He extended his hand, and she hesitated. Polite instinct warred with disbelief. "Emma, I remember you. You helped me yesterday." Her words caught in her throat. "You're—" "I'm Daniel," he said, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I own this company." The words hit her like a sudden downpour. Emma's mind scrambled. "Own this company? But how? You were out there yesterday." Her hands shook, and she gripped the edge of the counter to steady herself. Daniel's gaze softened, as if reading her thoughts. "Yes, it was me out there. But yesterday, you didn't see the man begging. You saw a person. And that's something rare, Emma. That's why I remember you." The cafe felt suddenly too small, too loud, and yet intensely intimate. Emma's co-workers whispered behind her back, stealing glances at the suited stranger, their curiosity palpable. She could hear their unspoken questions. Who is he? Why is he here? But Emma's focus was entirely on him. The stranger who had been homeless yesterday and now stood in her cafe, confident, polished, and inexplicably remarkable. Daniel continued, his voice calm, measured. "I don't usually return places like this, but I wanted to see you again. Your kindness didn't go unnoticed, Emma. It doesn't go unnoticed in my world either." She blinked rapidly, trying to process the words. Her mind raced with disbelief, questions, and a dawning sense of hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. I don't understand. You're the CEO? But yesterday..." He chuckled softly, a sound that carried warmth without arrogance. "Yesterday, I was just a man in need. Today, I am someone who has the ability to repay the kindness I received. And I would like to offer you an opportunity." Emma felt her chest tighten. She had dreamed of a better life, of escaping the endless cycle of shifts, tips, and bills. But this was something she had never imagined, not in her wildest hopes. Her throat felt dry, her hands clammy, yet her heart raced with anticipation. I don't know what to say," she murmured. "Then don't say anything yet," Daniel said gently. "Just listen. I own Summit Enterprises, and I need people I can trust, people with integrity, courage, and compassion. I saw all of that in you yesterday. I want to offer you a position here, entry level but with potential. If you're willing to take the chance, you could change the trajectory of your life, Emma." Her mind reeled. "Me? But I'm just a waitress. I don't know anything about business, meetings, investors." Daniel's eyes held hers steadily. "And yet, you understand what most people don't. You understand people. You act with honesty when others would look the other way. That matters more than any degree. I can teach you the rest." Emma's fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. This was real, not a dream, not a cruel trick. The man she had helped, someone who had appeared vulnerable, lost, and ordinary, was offering her a chance at the extraordinary. She wanted to laugh, cry, and scream all at once. She wanted to run, hide, and embrace him simultaneously. Instead, she nodded, words failing her, letting the weight of disbelief and hope crash over her. Daniel smiled again, a quiet, genuine smile. "I promise, Emma, this is only the beginning. And I think you're going to surprise yourself." As the morning rush continued around them, Emma felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The ordinary world of coffee orders and tips had vanished, replaced by a horizon that shimmered with possibility. For the first time in years, she dared to imagine that life could be bigger, brighter, and kinder than she had ever allowed herself to believe. And somewhere deep in her heart, she whispered the words that had lingered since yesterday. Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. This time, she understood it fully. The afternoon sun slanted to the tall cafe windows, casting long golden streaks across the worn wooden floors. Emma Carter sat stiffly on a small bench near the entrance, her heart hammering in her chest as Daniel adjusted his tie and settled into the chair across from her. The cafe buzzed around them, oblivious of quiet tension that filled the corner where they sat. "You don't have to answer right away," Daniel began, his voice calm, steady, and unyielding in a way that commanded attention without demanding it. "I know this is a lot to take in." Emma nodded, Though her mind was a whirlwind, she still couldn't fully process the reality of yesterday and today. First, a small act of kindness, and now the man she had helped offering her a chance to change her life entirely. I just don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I mean, I've never worked in a place like yours. I'm just me. Daniel's smile softened, and he leaned forward slightly. Emma, that's exactly why I want you. People like you are rare. You have integrity. You see value in others, even when they are overlooked. That kind of perspective is priceless in my world. Emma bit her lip, glancing down at her hands. She had spent most of her life surviving, not thriving. Corporate life, investors' meetings, these were alien concepts. She feared that stepping into Daniel's world would expose her ignorance, her inexperience, her ordinary life. I get it, he continued. You're worried you won't fit in, that people will judge you for being yourself. But I've seen it happen too often, people with experience, degrees, and fancy resumes lacking the one thing that truly matters, character. You already have what they're missing. Emma's chest tightened. The words were both comforting and terrifying. She had dreamed of something bigger, something beyond waiting tables and paying bills, but the reality of opportunity was daunting, fear tangled with excitement, forming a knot she didn't know how to untangle. You're offering me a job? She finally asked, her voice shaky. Yes, Daniel said simply. Entry level, but with room to grow. I want you to learn, to develop, and to become someone who can make a real impact. And I want to do it with you, Emma. You've already shown me the qualities I value most. I need people like you in my company. Her mind reeled. But what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? Daniel's gaze was unwavering. Then you try again. Failure is part of growth. But what you won't have, Emma, is the regret of never having taken a chance. You see, life has a funny way of rewarding people who act selflessly and courageously, even if they don't realize at the time. Yesterday you acted selflessly. Today, you have a chance to act courageously. The words settled over her like a gentle warmth. Courage. She had been brave enough to give $5 to a stranger yesterday, even when it meant sacrificing her own limited resources. Maybe, just maybe, she could be brave enough today to accept a challenge that could transform her future. She looked at Daniel, really looked at him, and saw not just a CEO, but a person who recognized something in her that she had barely allowed herself to see. Her fears whispered, "You're not ready. You don't belong." But another voice, quieter and stronger, answered, "You are ready. You've always been ready." I want to try, she said finally, her voice gaining strength. I want to learn. I want to take the chance. Daniel's smile broadened, a mix of pride and genuine admiration. That's all I needed to hear. I promise you won't regret it. The moment was punctuated by the cafe door jingling. Emma glanced up, half expecting another customer, but it was just a passing pedestrian. She shook off the distraction and returned her attention to Daniel. First things first, he said, leaning back, his tone shifting professional yet approachable. You'll start with the basics, learning the operations, understanding the team, familiarizing yourself with how we run projects. I'll pair you with Sophie, our senior assistant. She's sharp, patient, and excellent at mentoring new employees. Emma's heart raced at the thought of stepping into an office environment so different from the cafe. The idea of meetings, presentations, and formal protocols made her stomach flutter with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. But she was determined not to let fear dictate her life. And the pay? She asked cautiously. Daniel chuckled softly. Don't worry. We'll make sure you're compensated fairly. This isn't charity, Emma. It's an opportunity. A chance to grow, learn, and prove yourself in a world that often overlooks people like you. Your kindness yesterday isn't just remembered. It's recognized, and it has value. Emma nodded slowly, feeling the weight of possibility pressing down on her. Her thoughts drifted briefly to her old life. The cramped apartment, the endless shifts, the relentless stress of bills and responsibilities. It all seemed both distant and impossibly close. She was leaving comfort for uncertainty, but the promise of growth and purpose made the risk worth taking. All right, she said finally, her voice steadier now. I'll do it. I'll take the chance. Daniel's smile returned, warmer this time, tinged with subtle satisfaction. Good. That's the spirit I was hoping for. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice, not in secrecy but in encouragement. Emma, remember this. Opportunity doesn't always knock twice. And when it does, you grab it with both hands. You're about to step into a world that's going to challenge you, push you, and test you, but it's also going to reward you in ways you can't yet imagine. I've seen that in you already. Emma swallowed hard, nodding. The fear still lingered, a shadow at the edges of her mind, but it no longer controlled her. She felt a spark of determination ignite, a tiny flame of confidence that had been buried beneath years of routine and self-doubt. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice carrying sincerity and resolve. "I won't let you down." Daniel's smile lingered, steady and reassuring. "I know you won't. And remember, Emma, this is just the beginning." As the morning sun climbed higher, spilling light across the bustling cafe, Emma felt a shift deep within her. The world that had seemed small, predictable, and relentless suddenly stretched wide with possibility. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready to walk it with her head held high. Outside the window, the city moved on, unaware of the small moment that had the potential to change one woman's life forever. Inside, Emma Carter took her first step towards something greater, and the echo of her kindness, the act that sparked it all, resonated quietly in her heart. The elevator door slid open with a soft chime, revealing the polished marble floors of Summit Enterprises. Emma Carter stepped out, clutching her tote bag a little too tightly, nerves fluttering like birds in her chest. The office smelled faintly of coffee and new leather, an intoxicating blend of efficiency and ambition. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, and walked toward the reception desk. "Good morning, I'm Emma Carter," she said, her voice steadying as the receptionist glanced up. "I'm starting today with Mr. Daniels' team." The receptionist smiled warmly. "Of course. Sophie will meet you in a moment. She'll show you around and get you settled." Emma nodded and turned, glancing around the sleek office. The open-plan layout was filled with people tapping at keyboards, talking into headsets, and hurrying from one meeting to another. It was a world she had never known, a stark contrast to chaos at Café Lumiere, yet just as intense in its own way. Sophie arrived moments later, a poised woman in her early 30s, carrying a clipboard and a cup of coffee. "You must be Emma," she said, extending a hand. Her grip was firm and professional. "Daniel mentioned you'd be joining us. Welcome aboard." "Thank you," Emma replied, shaking her hand. "I'm excited to learn." Sophie smiled, sensing the blend of nervousness and determination in Emma. "Don't worry. You'll pick it up quickly. Follow me. We'll start with an office tour, and then I'll introduce you to the team." As they walked through the bustling office, Emma marveled at everything. The sleek workstations, the glass-walled meeting rooms, the digital displays of projects and metrics. She tried to absorb as much as she could, her senses on high alert, but every detail reminded her of how far outside her comfort zone she was. "You'll start with familiarizing yourself with our project management software," Sophie explained as they paused at a workstation. "It's a bit overwhelming at first, but you'll get the hang of it. Then, we'll assign you a small project to manage under supervision. Nothing too heavy. You'll ease in gradually." Emma nodded, her hands slightly trembling. "I can do that," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. Sophie led her to a desk in a quiet corner. "This will be your workstation. Feel free to personalize a little. It helps make the office feel like your own space." Emma set down her bag and looked at the clean desk, imagining sticky notes, pens, and a small plant, maybe even a photo of her old cafe co-workers. The thought brought a small smile to her lips. She had never had a desk that felt truly hers before, and the idea that she could belong here, even in a small way, filled her with cautious hope. Over the next hour, Sophie guided Emma through basic office protocols, email systems, and filing procedures. Emma absorbed as much as she could, asking questions when needed, though some of the jargon sounded like a foreign language. Yet Sophie's patience and encouragement made it easier, reminding her that no one expected perfection on the first day. By late morning, Emma was introduced to the rest of the team, a mix of seasoned professionals, some curious, some skeptical of a newcomer. She shook hands, offered polite smiles, and tried to remember names and roles. A few colleagues whispered among themselves, casting curious glances her way. Emma felt a pang of insecurity. She wasn't sure she belonged here. Was she out of her depth? Would she embarrass herself in front of this polished, confident crowd? Sophie noticed her hesitation. "Don't worry about what anyone thinks," she whispered. "Just focus on doing your best. Your attitude will speak louder than any background or resume." Emma took a deep breath, letting Sophie's words sink in. She reminded herself of yesterday, of the small act of kindness that had sparked this journey. She had been brave enough then. She could be brave now. Around midday, Daniel appeared in the office, walking with purposeful confidence, yet with a warmth reserved for those he trusted. Emma's stomach fluttered as he approached. "How's it going?" he asked, glancing at her workstation. Emma straightened, trying to mask her nerves. "Good. I'm learning the systems and getting familiar with the office." Daniel nodded, a subtle smile tugging at his lips. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Take your time, but remember, you already have the most important skill here, integrity. Everything else can be learned." Emma nodded, feeling a flicker of pride. Daniel's belief in her bolstered her confidence, making the overwhelming office feel just a little less intimidating. The afternoon brought new challenges. Emma was assigned a small project to manage, a simple internal report, but it required navigating unfamiliar software, coordinating with multiple colleagues, and ensuring accuracy. She struggled initially, her fingers fumbling over keyboard, her mind racing to keep track of deadlines and instructions. A few minor mistakes prompted whispers among co-workers, and a sharp glance from a rival colleague made her cheeks burn. Yet, with Sophie's guidance and Daniel's quiet support, Emma persevered. She learned to organize her work, communicate clearly, and ask for help when needed. Slowly, the anxiety that had gripped her in the morning began to ease, replaced by a growing sense of accomplishment. She realized that stepping out of her comfort zone, though terrifying, was also exhilarating. During a brief pause, Emma gazed out the window, watching the city bustle below. She thought of the cafe, her old co-workers, and the man whose kindness had transformed her life. A small smile curved her lips. This new world was challenging, yes, but was also alive with possibility. The same possibility that had been invisible to her just a day ago. By the end of her first day, Emma had completed her initial tasks, made small connections with the team, and begun to feel a sense of belonging. Daniel stopped by her desk one last time before leaving for the day. "You did well today," he said quietly. "Remember, this is only the beginning. Keep being yourself, stay honest, and trust your instincts. I have no doubt you're going to thrive here." Emma's heart swelled with gratitude and determination. She had stepped into a world that had seemed foreign and intimidating. Yet for the first time in her life, she felt capable, valued, and seen. She knew there would be mistakes, challenges, and moments of doubt, but she was ready to face them. As she packed up her things to leave, Emma glanced around the sleek office one last time. She could almost hear the echo of yesterday's words in her mind. Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. And now, that kindness had carried her into a new life, filled with opportunities, growth, and the chance to redefine herself on her own terms. Stepping out into the cool evening air, Emma felt a surge of hope. She was no longer just a waitress navigating a small cafe. She was someone with purpose, potential, and a path stretching wide before her. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning of a journey that would test her, reward her, and ultimately transform her life forever. Emma Carter arrived at Summit Enterprises with a mix of determination and nerves buzzing in her chest. The morning sunlight spilled across the lobby, glinting off polished marble and glass walls, reflecting the intensity of the day ahead. Today wasn't just another day of learning the ropes. It was the day she would face her first real test. Sophie met her at the elevator, a reassuring smile on her face. "Big day, Emma. You'll be presenting your preliminary report to the department head. Don't worry, you prepared well." Emma swallowed hard. She had spent hours after her first day meticulously reviewing project details, double-checking numbers, and rehearsing how to present her findings clearly. Still, a flutter of anxiety danced through her stomach. Speaking in front of experienced professionals, many of whom had decades more experience than her, was intimidating. I'll try my best, Emma murmured. That's all anyone can ask, Sophie said, patting her shoulder before letting her step into the conference room. Inside, the department head, Mr. Caldwell, waited with a stack of papers and a clipboard. Other team members were scattered around the table, some curious, some skeptical of the new hire. A hush settled over the room as Emma set up her laptop and opened the presentation. "Good morning," she began, her voice slightly shaky. "I'm Emma Carter, and today I'll be presenting the preliminary findings of our client project." She took a deep breath, forcing herself to maintain eye contact. The first few slides went smoothly, her practice paying off. But midway through, a question from Mr. Caldwell caught her off guard. "How did you determine the projected metrics for the third quarter? Your assumptions seem optimistic." Emma's mind raced. She remembered Sophie's advice. Admit when you don't know something and redirect with clarity. "You're right. The projections are optimistic, based on preliminary data and industry trends. I've outlined the assumptions here," she said, pointing to the slides. "We can refine them with more detailed analysis and additional input from the team." There was a brief pause, then a nod from Mr. Caldwell. "Fair enough. Just make sure the next iteration accounts for possible fluctuations." A few colleagues whispered among themselves, casting subtle glances. Emma could feel a flicker of doubt from one particularly critical coworker, Lisa, who had a reputation for undermining newcomers. Emma's hands clenched briefly under the table, but she forced herself to focus. She was here to learn and to prove herself, not to be intimidated. As the presentation continued, she answered questions, clarified assumptions, and presented her findings with honesty and sincerity. By the end, the room was noticeably warmer, nods replacing skeptical glances. Mr. Caldwell leaned back, a small smile crossing his face. "Good work, Emma. Not perfect, but impressive for a first attempt. I expect you'll refine this with your team and deliver an even stronger report." Relief washed over her. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly, replaced by a cautious pride. She had survived her first real challenge. After the meeting, Sophie pulled her aside. "See? I told you. You have the skills. You just needed the opportunity to show them. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." Emma nodded, absorbing the encouragement. She realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was moving forward despite it. Her fears from yesterday, from the cafe, seemed distant now, replaced by the exhilaration of proving herself in a new world. Yet challenges were far from over. As she returned to her desk, Lisa approached, a tight-lipped smile masking something sharper beneath. "Not bad for a cafe girl," Lisa said, her tone dripping with condescension. "But don't get too comfortable. Corporate life isn't forgiving." Emma felt the sting, but forced herself to remain composed. "Thank you for your feedback," she said evenly. "I'll make sure to keep improving." Lisa's eyes flickered with surprise. Emma's calm response had disarmed her. The rivalry was subtle but real, a reminder that success here would require not only skill but resilience and tact. Throughout the day, Emma navigated emails, updated reports, and coordinated with team members. Each task presented new hurdles: unfamiliar software, complex project requirements, and the pressure of deadlines. Mistakes happened, small ones, but each time, Emma learned quickly, asking for guidance when needed and adapting with growing confidence. During a short break, Daniel appeared in the office, leaning casually against the doorframe. "How's it going?" he asked, a quiet curiosity in his voice. Emma straightened, trying to mask the exhaustion and lingering anxiety. "It's challenging, but I'm learning. I made some mistakes, but I think I handled them okay." Daniel's eyes softened. "Emma, mistakes are part of growth. What matters is that you face them honestly and learn. I've seen that quality in you from the start. Keep it up. You're stronger than you think." Emma felt a surge of gratitude and determination. Daniel's words reminded her of the man she had helped outside the cafe, the same man whose generosity had given her this chance. Now he was here, supporting her as she stepped into uncharted territory. The afternoon brought a final test. Emma was asked to assist with an urgent client proposal. compiling data from multiple sources, and ensuring the presentation was cohesive. The task was complex, requiring meticulous attention and coordination with colleagues who were used to working at a rapid pace. She felt the familiar flutter of anxiety, but pressed on, determined not to falter. By the end of the day, the proposal was complete, polished, and ready for submission. Emma leaned back in her chair, exhaustion mingling with exhilaration. She had survived the day, faced her first major challenge, and proven to herself that she belonged here, even if the world around her sometimes doubted it. Sophie approached once more. "You did well today. Remember this feeling, the mix of fear and accomplishment. It's a sign that you're growing. And trust me, Emma, this is just the beginning." Emma nodded, a quiet smile spreading across her face. She felt the subtle shift within herself, the confidence growing, the courage solidifying, the realization that her life was no longer confined to cafe or the limitations she had once believed were unchangeable. As she walked out of the office into the cool evening air, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: possibility. The city streets stretched before her, full of movement and opportunity. Her journey was just beginning, but for the first time, she truly believed in herself. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she remembered the words she had whispered on that cold cafe corner. Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. That act, small yet powerful, had led her here. And now, Emma was ready to embrace every challenge, every lesson, and every unexpected turn that life had to offer. The office hummed with quiet efficiency as Emma Carter arrived, coffee in hand and determination in her step. Weeks had passed since her first day at Summit Enterprises, and the initial shock of the corporate world had given way to a growing sense of confidence. She had faced mistakes, awkward interaction, and moments of doubt, but each challenge had only strengthened her resolve. Today was different. Today, she would present her first major project independently, a client proposal that could secure a significant contract for the company. The stakes were high, and the pressure was palpable, but Emma felt ready. She had pored over every detail, rehearsed every slide, and coordinated with colleagues to ensure accuracy. For the first time, she truly felt the thrill of stepping into her own power. Sophie arrived at her desk, offering a reassuring smile. "Emma, you've got this. Just remember everything you've learned. Speak confidently, and don't let nerves take over." Emma nodded, taking a deep breath. She repeated the mantra that had carried her through the past weeks. Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. That small act outside the cafe had set her on this path, and now, in the polished boardroom of Summit Enterprises, it felt like a talisman, a reminder that courage and integrity could create opportunity. The conference room was filled with senior executives and team members, some of whom had been skeptical when Emma first arrived. She took her place at the front, laptop open, heart steadying. When all eyes were on her, she began. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Emma Carter, and today I'll be presenting a proposal for our client project. This includes projected outcomes, strategic recommendations, and the proposed implementation plan." Her voice was clear and measured. She walked through each slide, explaining assumptions, projections, and strategies. Questions came, sharp and pointed, testing her knowledge and composure. Emma responded with honesty and clarity, drawing on everything she had learned over the past weeks. Midway through, Lisa, her critical coworker, challenged one of her recommendations. "These projections seem overly optimistic. How can you ensure we meet these targets?" Emma met her gaze, steady and calm. "The projections are based on careful analysis and input from our team. We've included contingency plans to mitigate risks, and I've outlined steps for monitoring progress and adjusting strategies as needed." The room fell silent for a moment, then murmurs of approval began to ripple through the audience. Even Lisa seemed momentarily disarmed by Emma's poise and confidence. By the time Emma reached the final slide, she felt a rush of accomplishment. The presentation was concise, professional, and compelling. She had navigated questions, addressed concerns, and delivered her vision clearly. Mr. Caldwell, the department head, leaned back in his chair, a rare smile on his face. "Emma, that was impressive. You've demonstrated not only competence, but insight and strategic thinking. Excellent work." The room erupted in polite applause, and Emma felt a warm glow of pride and relief. She had done it. Her first major success in a world that had once seemed intimidating and foreign. After the presentation, Daniel appeared, leaning casually against the doorway. His eyes met hers, and he offered a small, approving nod. "Well done, Emma. I knew you had it in you. You exceeded expectations today." Emma felt her cheeks flush. "Thank you. I just tried to do my best." Daniel's smile widened, a quiet warmth in his expression. "That's all anyone can ask for. And your best is exactly what we need here." Later, back at her desk, Emma reflected on the day. The nervous girl who had arrived weeks ago at Summit Enterprises, unsure and timid, had grown into someone capable of handling real responsibility, making decisions, and standing confidently in front of experienced professionals. She realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was moving forward despite it. And she had done just that. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sophie. "Lunch? You've earned it. We need to celebrate your win." Emma smiled, typing back a quick affirmative reply. She needed a moment to savor her achievement, to share it with someone who had guided her patiently through every challenge. As she walked to the small cafe nearby with Sophie, her mind drifted to Daniel. There was something about him, beyond the CEO title, beyond his polished exterior, that made her heart beat a little faster. It wasn't just admiration or gratitude for the opportunity he had given her. It was something subtler, something that lingered in glances, in quiet moments, in the way he seemed to see her fully, as if recognizing not only her potential but the person she truly was. During lunch, Sophie raised a toast with her coffee cup. "To Emma, our rising star. You handled that presentation like a seasoned pro." Emma laughed, feeling a mix of joy and disbelief. "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your guidance." Sophie waved her hand dismissively. "Nonsense. You did all the hard work. Today, you proved that courage, perseverance, and honesty are as valuable as experience and degrees. You've come a long way in a few weeks." Emma's smile lingered, her thoughts turning inward. She remembered the cold morning outside Café Lumière, the threadbare coat, the trembling hands of a man in need. That small act of kindness had been the catalyst, setting her life on a trajectory she had never imagined. And now, in this bustling city, surrounded by opportunity and growth, she felt the quiet thrill of possibilities stretching before her. Later that evening, as Emma walked home to the glowing streets, the city lights reflecting in puddles from a recent rain, she felt a sense of accomplishment and hope she hadn't known in years. Life had presented her with a chance, and she had taken it. The challenges had been real, the stakes high, but she had emerged stronger, more confident, and ready for what lay ahead. She paused briefly near a familiar cafe window, glancing inside at strangers, sipping coffee, laughing, and living their ordinary lives. Emma smiled to herself, remembering the lesson that had carried her this far. Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Daniel. "Congratulations, Emma. You did wonderfully today. Proud to have you on the team." Her heart skipped a beat. The words carried more than professional approval. They carried recognition, connection, and a subtle promise that her journey was just beginning. Emma typed a quick reply, a smile lingering on her lips. "Thank you, Daniel. Couldn't have done it without your support." As she continued her walk, Emma felt the city pulse around her, vibrant and full of possibilities. She knew there would be more challenges, more tests, and more moments of doubt. But she also knew that she had the courage, determination, and integrity to face them all. And somewhere in the quiet corner of her heart, a spark of something more, a connection she couldn't yet define, began to grow, whispering that life had even greater surprises in store. Emma had stepped into a new world, and for the first time, she felt truly alive. The morning sun poured through floor-to-ceiling windows of Summit Enterprises, illuminating the sleek offices in a golden glow. Emma Carter arrived earlier than usual, clutching her laptop and a folder of notes. Today was pivotal. Not just another day at work, but the day she would lead a client presentation that could secure a major deal for the company. Weeks of preparation had led to this moment. Emma had worked tirelessly, learning the intricacies of corporate strategy, coordinating with team members, and refining every detail of the presentation. Her nerves were present, a low hum beneath her determination, but she carried them with quiet confidence rather than fear. Sophie appeared beside her, offering the usual reassuring smile. Big day, Emma. Remember, you've earned this. Speak clearly, trust your work, and show them the vision you've built. Emma nodded, drawing strength from her mentor's words. She recalled Daniel's advice. Integrity, courage, and honesty matter more than experience. Those lessons had guided her through every challenge, every mistake, and every triumph. The conference room was filled with executives, clients, and Daniel, who stood at the back, observing with quiet pride. Emma felt a flutter of nerves as she set up her laptop and glanced at her meticulously prepared slides. She drew a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and began. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice calm yet commanding. "I'm Emma Carter, and today I'll present our strategic proposal for your upcoming project. This includes projected outcomes, risk management strategies, and implementation steps tailored to your goals." Questions came swiftly, sharp and probing, but Emma answered each with precision, honesty, and clarity. She presented contingency plans, data analysis, and actionable strategies with confidence, drawing on weeks of research and collaboration. Midway through, Lisa interjected, her tone skeptical. "Emma, how will you handle potential discrepancies in client data? These numbers seem optimistic." Emma met her gaze without hesitation. "I anticipated this concern. We've included validation protocols and ongoing monitoring systems to ensure accuracy. If adjustments are necessary, our team can pivot quickly while maintaining alignment with project goals." A few nods of approval rippled through the room. Even Lisa seemed momentarily disarmed by Emma's poise. By the final slide, Emma could feel the shift. The energy in the room had transformed from polite skepticism to genuine engagement. Questions turned into discussions, and discussions into nods of agreement. Mr. Caldwell, the department head, leaned back in his chair, a rare smile on his face. "Emma, this is exceptional," he said. "You've demonstrated strategic thinking, initiative, and confidence beyond what I expected. This proposal has the potential to secure significant growth for our client and for Summit Enterprises." Applause followed, and Emma felt a surge of pride and relief. The months of hard work, self-doubt, and courage had led to this breakthrough. She had proven not only to the company but to herself that she belonged here. After the presentation, Daniel approached her, his eyes reflecting quiet admiration. "Emma, you did wonderfully. You've grown immensely since day one. Today, you didn't just succeed, you inspired confidence in everyone here." Emma's cheeks flushed. "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your guidance." Daniel's gaze softened, and a subtle, unspoken connection seemed to pass between them. A recognition of trust, respect, and perhaps something deeper. "You've earned this, Emma, and I'm glad you're part of the team." The afternoon passed in a celebratory haze. Colleagues offered congratulations, emails of praise arrived, and even Lisa offered begrudging nod of approval. Emma felt a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet astonishment. She had started as a nervous newcomer, unfamiliar with corporate life, and now she stood as someone respected, capable, and valued. Later, as the office emptied, Sophie joined her at her desk. "Emma, today was a milestone. You've proven your capabilities and shown that courage and honesty truly matter. I'm proud of you." Emma smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "I couldn't have imagined all this when I was serving coffee, wondering if my small act of kindness even mattered." Sophie nodded. "They mattered, and they still do. Every step you take forward builds on that foundation. Never forget it." Emma's thoughts drifted to the day she had helped the man outside the cafe. The small gesture that had set everything in motion, that moment of empathy, of seeing a person rather than circumstance, had transformed her life in ways she had never imagined. As the sun dipped low, casting warm hues across the city skyline, Daniel appeared by her desk. "Heading home?" he asked casually, though his eyes carried an unspoken message. Emma nodded. "Yes, it's been a long but amazing day." He smiled, a gentle warmth that made her heart skip a beat. "I hope you realize what you've accomplished today. You've not only impressed the team, but shown yourself just how capable you are. Don't lose sight of that." "I won't," Emma replied softly. As she stepped out into the evening streets, the city glittered with possibilities. The once overwhelming world had become a canvas for her growth, her courage, and her dreams. Emma felt a deep sense of belonging, not just in her work, but in the rhythm of her own life, shaped by choices, courage, and compassion. Emma Carter paused for a moment at a familiar corner cafe, looking at the bustling city lights and feeling the journey behind her, from a waitress with dreams too large for her reality to a professional capable of shaping her own future. She had grown in ways she had never imagined. Her kindness, courage, and determination had opened doors, built trust, and changed the trajectory of her life. And as she walked home, the quiet smile on her face carried the knowledge that life's small gestures, like the $5 given to a stranger, could ripple outward, transforming both the giver and the receiver. Emma's story was no longer about survival. It was about thriving, embracing opportunity, and trusting that courage and kindness could light even the darkest paths. And somewhere in the city's glow, she felt ready for whatever life had in store next.